Hi, I'm Dan Jones from Milwaukee Public Television. When Scott Walker was elected governor, that created an important job opening for someone to fill, Milwaukee County Executive. There are 5 candidates that will be on the February 15th primary ballot. The top 2 vote-getters will face off in the April 5th general election. We are proud to bring you this forum between the candidates held on January 21st at the Marquette University Law School.
From Eckstein Hall at the Marquette University Law School, Milwaukee Public Television brings you coverage of the Milwaukee County Executive Candidate Forum, presented by the Law School and the Milwaukee Press Club. Here's your moderator, Mike Goucher.
And welcome everyone to Eckstein Hall for today's forum featuring the 5 candidates for Milwaukee County Executive. I'm Mike Goucher. I serve as a distinguished fellow in law and public policy at Marquette University Law School. I'm also the host of the statewide public affairs program Up Front. On behalf of the Law School and the Milwaukee Press Club, we are absolutely delighted that all of you in this room and those of you at home could be with us today. As some of you know, the law school was the site of debates last fall between the candidates for Attorney General, Governor, and U.S. Senate. And in keeping with our goal, our mission of promoting civil, informed debate in this community, we are happy to provide the venue for today's forum. We are also pleased to partner with the Press Club in this effort, and we want to commend the club, the sponsors of the club's Newsmaker Luncheon series, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and Steve Jagler on their work in order to pull all of this together. This marks the first joint appearance of the candidates in the February 15th primary. The top 2 finishers will move on to the April election. This event will last 1 hour and 15 minutes. A panel of journalists will be asking questions of the candidates. Some will be for all of the candidates, but the journalists also have the freedom to direct specific questions to specific candidates. My job will be to watch the time closely. I know that it will go by very quickly. I can assure the candidates of that and everybody in this room. I even have a watch with me, but I don't want to have to use it. So I will ask the candidates to be concise and direct in your responses. And if they stray from the question at hand, frankly, we may jump in to move the conversation along. But again, we urge you to be succinct. That will allow us to cover as much ground as possible today. Having said that, let me thank all of the candidates for joining us here at Marquette Law School and introduce you briefly to the audience. I'm going to go from your left to right. At the far left there is philanthropist Chris Abele. Seated next to Chris Abele is paralegal and community activist Aisha Griffin. Jim Sullivan, the former state senator and attorney, is seated in the middle. Jeff Stone, state representative, is seated next to Jim Sullivan. And next to me is the acting Milwaukee County Executive, Lee Holloway. Thanks again to all of you for being with us today. The candidates will be questioned by our panel of journalists. Their backs are to you, but hey, it's about the candidates and not the journalists here, so we apologize for that. But we'll go down the list here. LaToya Dennis from WWM Radio, Brad Hicks, anchor for WITI TV, Fox 6, Steve Jagler, the executive editor of the Milwaukee Biz Times, and Steve Schultz, a reporter for the Journal-Sentinel. The questions will begin in just a moment, but first, we want to have 1-minute opening statements, from each of the candidates, and we will begin on the left over there with Chris Abele.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks to the Law School and the Press Club for hosting the debate. It's a privilege to be here. I'm Chris Abele. I'm running for county executive, and I'm the new guy. My day job, I run the Argosy Foundation, where I've worked for years to strengthen Milwaukee County. I wasn't lucky enough to be born in Wisconsin, but I was smart enough to stay here when I got here. My wife and I have a young daughter, a baby on the way, and there's no place in the world we'd rather bring them up. And that's exactly why I'm extremely worried about where the county is headed right now. The problems we're going to talk about today are the same problems we've been talking about for 10 years, and they've been getting worse. We're not going to fix anything by rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. We need to rebuild the boat. I'm not doing this because I need a job, and I'm not doing it to protect the status quo, and that's why I'm not going to take any special interest PAC money. I'm doing this for one reason and one reason alone, to bring back a county we can be proud of and a county that works. And to do that, I will work with anyone, partner with anyone, Republican or Democrat, who can help create jobs and get the budget under control. Thank you very much.
The next opening statement goes to Aisha Griffin.
How you all doing? Again, my name is Aisha Griffin. Initially, I was the only candidate that was not invited to this forum. I was purposely left out. I hope that I am treated with respect and decorum and professionalism as all candidates should be, whether you're a woman or a man. I am running to restore responsibility within the Milwaukee County government. I think what separates me from the other candidates, respectfully, is that I am not into private interest. I am for the public good. I hope that people keep an open mind and that you don't judge a book by its cover until you read within the chapters. So I appreciate you all taking the opportunity to listen to myself. And because I did not know the itinerary or what have you, I did bring my notes that you all can know that I have taken this candidacy seriously. I have developed some different ideas and itineraries that I would like to share if possible. And I look forward to the forum. Thank you.
Jim Sullivan.
Thank you very much. I'm Jim Sullivan. I'm running for Milwaukee County Executive. It's wonderful to be back here at Marquette Law School. I am a graduate of the Marquette Law School. It was not nearly so grand and beautiful when I attended a decade or so ago. But I'm running for Milwaukee County Executive because I love Milwaukee County. I believe that the services that we depend on are an important, integral part of our community. I've grown up in this community. I went to high school here. I came back here after college. I put myself through law school here. And I grew up in a family with a strong tradition of public service. It was military service that brought my family here. My father's service in the Coast Guard nearly 30 years ago. He retired here, and we've stayed here and put down roots. My wife and I live in Wauwatosa with our 2 boys, and I have taken that message of public service to heart, serving in the military myself, also on the City Council in Wauwatosa, 4 years in the State Senate. And as I look at the state of Milwaukee County and just the record of decay and neglect that's gone on there and how it affects our basic programming, then I think this is the kind of thing that if you care, then you need to step up. And I, for one, am here to make sure that we run this government efficiently, and I am not somebody who's going to step by and allow that cycle of neglect and decay to continue.
Jeff Stone.
First, I want to thank Mike Goucher and the Marquette Law School, as well as the Press Club, for hosting this event. And also, I would like to say a special thanks to my wife, Lynn, who's here with us today. She's been my partner in business and has allowed me to spend a lot of years doing something that I feel very strongly about, and that's serving the public in public office. Our county is at a turning point. Our property taxes are too high, we spend too much money, and we need jobs. To fix these things, we need leadership. Leadership that will deliver on promises. I want you to remember these 3 things. I will not raise your taxes. I will use my experience as a local and state representative to make sure we get every ounce of value out of the tax dollars we spend. And as a small businessman, I know that I have got to work tirelessly to make sure that we bring businesses to this county that will expand and bring us more jobs. With your support, and with your vote, we can make Milwaukee County a place that we are proud to live, work, and call home. I'm Jeff Stone, and I want to be your next county executive. Thank you.
Lee Holloway.
I'm Lee Holloway. I am your county executive, and I'd like to thank the organizers who made this a reality. First thing is I'd like to make sure that you're aware that I am a 18-year supervisor with 8 years of chairman responsibility. I'd like to make sure that you're aware that it's important that you have a county executive that has a proven experience in leadership. I think I am a prime example of that. I created the GAMP program that is General System Medical Program that have provided hundreds of thousands of people health care over a 16-year period. It became a national model. Just here recently, in the last couple of years, I created an insurance plan in Milwaukee County that have saved $130 million. Just in the last couple of months, I've been involved in a master mental health program that is submitted to the board at this time that will take and provide mental health services, reducing the tax rate of $2 to $3 million a year. I think that those are the kind of initiatives that you need to have as an experienced county executive. The last thing I like to take and bring back, for some of you in this audience are mature looking, will remember the CETA program, Comprehensive Employment Training Program. I'd like to bring that back and also make that available to the public and private sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the candidates for their opening statements. Now let's take some questions. Steve Jagler, the executive editor of Biz Times Milwaukee, will go first. And as past president of the press club, I also know you want to make a brief special acknowledgement.
Yeah, I just have a few thank yous to put out there, Mike, at the outset. First, I want to thank you and the Marquette Law School for partnering with the press club to put this event together. I want to thank our media panel, my fellow members of the media panel, and the candidates for making time on their busy schedules to be here with us today. I want to thank Journal Communications and the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel for sponsoring the press club's ongoing newsmaker luncheons throughout the year. And finally, I want to thank Channels 10 and 36 and Time Warner Cable Video on Demand for rebroadcasting this event so the public can get a true sense of our candidates side by side. So thank you for being here today. I'll begin with the first question. The previous county executive was not exactly a proponent of the M7 economic development initiative that was launched, and in fact went several months without even filling the economic development director's position. So I ask you today, what kind of role should the county play in regional economic development, and how can the county government help create jobs in the region? Mike, I believe we'll start on this end, or?
Oh, we can start that way? Sure, that's fine.
Sure, thanks for the question. Well, the first thing that I think it's important is right now, as most of you know, the county has a job creation position, the city has a job creation position, and the state, through commerce, has a job creation functionality and has an office in Milwaukee. Anybody who's paid attention in the last 10 years, and it's probably been a lot longer than that, has seen that they're not quite as coordinated as they could be, and sometimes the relationship seems more competitive than anything else. I think everybody would be better served by one office, one set of messages, one set of tools where each office and everybody who can possibly interact with a potential business knows every tool that county can use to attract a business, every tool that city, every tool that state. I don't think it's good enough to just be open for business, to wait for opportunities to mosey on through and then try and react to it. I think we need to target industries that we want to attract. I think we need to target locations around the country where we can find them. And I think it can't be just the mayor, it can't be just the county exec, and it can't just be the governor's office. I think we need to work together because every city taxpayer is also a county taxpayer and a state taxpayer. And if we work together, we're going to have a hell of a lot better time bringing business in.
Aisha Griffin.
Well, last year alone, the Milwaukee County lost over 30,000 jobs. My fiscal policy, if I was elected Milwaukee County executive, would be expansionary fiscal policy with a special emphasis on microeconomics with productivity levels that increase jobs and increase public service, so that if you reduce taxes and increase government spending towards job relation and what have you, that will stimulate the economy. And so we look at the policies that the former county executive implemented and see the mistakes that he made and correct those. And then if we balance that macroeconomic fiscal policy towards the level of necessity for those who have public service needs, I think that we can recreate and bring those jobs in. I will also look at restoring several departments that the Milwaukee County executive, former Milwaukee County executive, Scott Walker, took away.
Jim Sullivan.
I think that the fact that the Economic Development Office went unfilled for a prolonged period of time is emblematic of what were, I think, some failures of leadership in putting ideology ahead of getting the job done. I think what we need to focus on is Milwaukee County needs to work for the people of Milwaukee County again. And in this case, in economic development, when you begin with a effort to use county government for an ideological tool or as a springboard for higher office, then you don't get the job done. And the county can and should play a very important role in terms of economic development. Active participation in the M7 should absolutely be a minimum. I think the county executive needs to be there. I think the county executive needs to have an economic development director, and I've seen where this can be done well. I think that you need to have those relationships both at the state and at the local level. I do. I've served on Wisconsin's Biotechnology Council for the past several years, helping to attract the kinds of research-based and family-supporting jobs that aren't going to be outsourced or sent overseas. And I know that we've got opportunities right here, whether it's the Park East or whether it's leading in that UWM Innovation project, which is out in the county grounds. That's something that could bring 2,500 jobs into our community. And these aren't simply high-end PhD and research jobs. These are support-level positions as well. And I think that we need to be taking some positive steps in that direction rather than using this position for an ideological selling point.
Jeff Stone.
Milwaukee and Milwaukee County is an area that in our history, we have a wealthy history of creating things. We make things. That's what we do. I came here 24 years ago with my wife, and we started a small business. We created a business from nothing. That's really the essence of job creation. I believe that that is the top priority we have to have. I pledged when I announced my campaign that I would meet with any business that wanted to expand here that would create 5 jobs. I will be there. I will be doing everything I can to make sure we get those jobs created in Milwaukee County. As a state representative, I have attended numerous meetings of the M7 because I wanted to be there, because I believe in a regional approach to economic development. We have some great concepts that we are moving forward with. Some that are already moving along are the Water Council. I was there at Sullivan when we created the Water Council, which is the idea of saying we have a hub of industry around the water industry where we can create jobs, where we have special skills and talents that we can bring to the table. It's going to create those type of high-tech jobs that will make our community move forward. But beyond that, I've developed a plan to create an energy hub, partnering our universities, UWM Marquette, MSOE, MATC, around the idea of saying we can take resources that we're currently wasting on testing cars that have computers in them and making sure they're clean, take those dollars and put it into energy research that will create the jobs that will drive our economy forward. A regional approach is one that I'm completely in favor of. Creating jobs is going to be my top priority.
Lee Holloway.
I'm into the action of creating jobs. I led the research park, the $13 million from the Marquette, working with Mike Cudahy to bring about the deal. I've also worked and supported Wauwatosa, creating a $13 million TIF. The jobs are about to start pretty much at this moment. The infrastructure, the buildings and what have you, that will create lots of jobs. I've also met with MSOE to support them in creating their parking lot, soccer field, and what have you, and I think that will stimulate that area down there. I've also met with my economic director. I've directed him to meet with Mr. Bateman and Mr. Drew to also start up the 440. As you know, the 440 has been pretty much empty out there. We need to start a research park to bring jobs in, and that will be an easy thing to do because Mr. Drew is busting out of the scenes at the research park now. So we're getting it going. We're not standing and waiting on anybody. We want to make sure that we also work with M7, but M7 got to bring something to the table so we can work with. And I'd be willing to work with anybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Steve Schultz for the next question. Steve.
Okay. As you know, over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of discussion about reorganizing county government. Some have talked about blowing up county government or dissolving county government, as Governor Walker and former county executive has talked about. I guess my question to you guys is, do you feel that the county's problems are so severe that the county should be dissolved and its programs spun off to the city, the state, and the suburbs, or new districts for parks and transit? Or do you favor a different approach, any of these or none of them at all?
We'll keep going down the line. I begin with Aisha Griffin.
Well, the county government, they are administrative arms of the state of Wisconsin. Right now, people are focusing on Milwaukee County. So you have to have legislation passed to dismantle county governments. If hypothetically speaking, the Milwaukee County government was dismantled, you would have approximately $81 million that annual cost that will be a burden for the taxpayers as it relates to the retirement pension fund debacle, also known as the legacy cost, in addition to $5 million in capital assets that will have to be somehow distributed to the alternative governments. I don't think that because someone cannot properly administer the government, then you just throw your hands up and say that's it. You know, I think that you have to have some type of freeze in certain non-core programs, the spending. I think that we can reshuffle some of the administrative mistakes that the former county executive made. For instance, I think that the budget should always be made with a mission, with an emphasis. And then when we give the budget pricing, what have you, to the different administrative departments within the county, we need to look at what can be costs can be cut back. One of the biggest problems with Milwaukee County is the legacy cost that's going on now. If we reduce some of the spending, take the spending that's saved and reallocate those fundings with the budget lines it relates to the retirement pension fund, we can kind of work towards getting the budget balance without having to eliminate the Milwaukee County government, which would be really a burden on the taxpayer if in fact that happened.
Jim Sullivan.
Yeah, I think that this question indicates what I think of as a self-fulfilling failure of leadership over the past 8 years. I think that if you were to talk to many of our friends and neighbors, people don't love Milwaukee County government. They're dissatisfied with the way it works. But when I say it's self-fulfilling, it is because of the anti-government ideological leadership that we've had here over 8 years that frankly has driven the vehicle of state government straight into the retaining wall. And now we see some in some elite circles and on some ideological perspectives pointing at it and say, look, Milwaukee County is broken. It is broken, but it's broken because of the fact that we have lacked the leadership of people of good faith to sit down together and to work to make its core functions work. Its core functions are something that we cannot get rid of. Core functions are critical to our identity as a community and our ability to lead the way forward. And those are mental health, transportation, parks and infrastructure, and a court system. And those entities aren't going to go away. So when we try and say, let's get rid of Milwaukee County, let's dismantle Milwaukee County, it's important to remember that when you open up your property tax bill and you see unelected taxing authorities on there, MMSD, MATC, those are important functions, but most Milwaukeeans that I talk to aren't excited about the fact that they have a line item on their tax bill for something where they don't have representation. And so if we were to do this, you still have those core functions. We have to provide the mental health. You've got to have transportation to get people back and forth to jobs and school. And I think that what we need is Milwaukee County to work for the people of Milwaukee County, not to devolve this into more and more unelected levels of government. That's not less government, it's more.
Jeff Stone.
We have a place on the south side of Milwaukee. It's down in the Menominee Valley. It's called Miller Compressing. It's a place where you can take your old junker car and they will just crush it and destroy it. The problem that we have is that we still owe money on that car. If Milwaukee County government was a vehicle, it's not working. Now, can we afford to say we're just going to take it out and crush it and destroy it and get rid of it? According to the Public Policy Forum, if you do that, if you eliminated county government tomorrow, you'd have an $80 million per year ongoing bill. Now, does that make sense to anybody here? That we're going to just destroy it and somehow all of our problems are going to be solved? It's a pretty ridiculous idea, really, when you think about it. What we need to do is we've got to make it work. We've got, if this is my vehicle at home, I got to find a way to make that car work and pay the bills and make it function, and that's what we've got to do here. And we've got to look at every element. And you've heard some of them talked about, but you've got things that have just been ongoing problems that have not been addressed for years here. And we've got to solve them. Behavioral health department. I mean, that follows a model out there that many counties have moved away from since the 1960s. We're still following a model that people don't get the kind of treatment that's in the best interest of them. The federal government won't pay for it. And then we're talking about building a new hospital that wouldn't even fit the model that the federal government will reimburse for. I mean, what kind of a plan was that? And where have we been for years not addressing this problem? It's not working, but we can't afford to just crush it and throw it away. And I know as a local official, I would be very concerned if I was a mayor or an alderman in one of the communities in this county that all of a sudden somebody's going to say, hey, there's no Milwaukee County, so do you want to take care of the parks? Do you want to plow all the county highways that run through your community? Do you have, they don't even know if they have the equipment to do this stuff, let alone the manpower or the budget. So let's just get beyond this idea. County government isn't going to magically disappear and all our problems go away. And I've been in Madison long enough to know that they're not sending any more money here to fix it. We're going to have to fix it here and make it work. And I believe we can do it. We can make a better county. We deserve it. So let's get to work. Let's do it together.
Lee Holloway.
I'm very motivated by Milwaukee County. I think it got great potentials. After all, we are the third busiest airport in the world. Did you hear me? The third busiest airport in the world. Number one busiest airport in the country. That, to me, motivates me to get on the ball. Now, I talked to one of my staff, which was an engineer, and I talked to them, and I asked him how many engineers did he have. He told me he had 3, counting himself, and 2 interns. I asked him, how much business do you do? He told me you do about $6 million. So I asked him, how many staff people do you need to do that? He said, well, we contract out. I said, I didn't ask you that. I asked you, how many people do we need to be able to provide that service? He said 2. I said, with those 2 additional staff people, would it be cost effective? He said, yes. It'll be cost effective, and I can bring in a $300,000 profit. I said, get on it. Let's get it going. Now, one of the reasons that a lot of the staff people were locked in is because Scott took and budgeted by numbers. He didn't budget from a managerial perspective. He only budgeted that he would give you $300,000 and you had to operate within that $300,000. Even though you may have a bright idea that with additional $200,000 that you could make that $200,000 plus bring in $300,000, he didn't look at that. He was just a number man. And so from that perspective, I think that what Milwaukee County needs to do is that it needs to look from within. We have a lot of resources and bright ideas that we can do from within. Earlier, I mentioned, and I guess one of my candidate members didn't hear me, that we are creating a master plan. The master plan will be mental health services divided into 16 units. When it's divided into 16 units, it will allow us to bill for the federal government on the 16. That means the $200 million budget we have now, because we're able to bill on 16 units, will start coming down. That's what I mean by the fact is that on the first year, we should be able to save at least $3 million per year. So what we plan on doing is contracting it out, contracting it out with private vendors. We also plan on utilizing the union members as well. We also plan on utilizing our ITT unit. The ITT unit will be the entity that will do all the billing. That way we'll stay in control. We'll be running it like a HMO. As you know, in an HMO, when you're a provider, you get paid, let's say, $60. But the HMO is charging $90. So that's the concept we'll be having from the ITT. And we'll save that additional $30,000 to be able to provide service for those who don't have a payer source.
Chris Abele.
I think one of the most unfortunate things about a report that came out from a GMC committee that one of my campaign co-chairs and a task force we co-chaired at the Greater Milwaukee Committee that looked at county. One of the most unfortunate things was the phrase blowing up county. I couldn't agree more. The concept on its own is a little bit silly. Nobody sets out to simply blow something up for the fun of it. That report was driven by a sense of urgency, and the urgency comes from the fact that all the services that county delivers have been declining and becoming less sustainable while liabilities have grown. You know, if there's a thing that's been frustrating to probably most people in the county, we've been approaching this problem like it's a small thing, like it's a storm cloud on the distant horizon. Well, it's right over the mast. It's all hands on deck time. And if there was something that seemed like interpretable as blowing up, what it probably was urgency. The point of the report was to look at every function that county delivers, point by point, and think, is this the most efficient, sustainable way to deliver quality service? As I said before, everybody who's a city taxpayer is also a county taxpayer and a state taxpayer. And generally speaking, I'm betting voters care a lot less about the name on the building or who is delivering a service than they care that it's being done efficiently and effectively. There's enormous amounts of overlap. There's an enormous amount of opportunity for streamlining. Our opportunity to optimize has been carefully preserved. Generally speaking, having success at that kind of exercise, consolidation, the issue that you think from the outside that you're going to run into is logistics and mechanics. That's the easy part. The hard part is resistance within the system to change. And whether it's political reasons or preserving the interest in preserving a job. Again, I'm not running because I want a career in politics. I'm not running because I need this job. I'm not running to score points for one side or the other. The reason I have a co-chair who's a Republican and a co-chair who's a Democrat isn't just because they're both friends and people who I respect. I'm hoping it kind of makes a broader point. County doesn't have to be the partisan office it's become, the county exec. And most people, I really believe, agree on 90% of everything if we let ourselves. There are plenty of opportunities for streamlining. There's plenty of opportunities to grow earned revenue. But the only way we get there is to work together, not city versus state versus county. Wisconsinites, shoulder to shoulder, not across the table, working together, same problems.
Next question goes to LaToya Dennis, and I urge all the candidates again to be as concise as possible in their responses. LaToya?
It seems as though all of you agree that county government is a necessity, and I think you all would also agree that the county is facing some major financial troubles. So I'm wondering if you could give 2 specific examples of what you would do to fix the problem.
Jim Sullivan, we begin with you this time.
A lot of the problems that we've gotten into with the county budget is because we've been in a process of fantasy budgeting in Milwaukee County for a prolonged period of time, whether that was deliberately underfunding services or working into the budget programs that or land sales that had not yet happened or labor concessions that had not been negotiated. I think that what we need to do is we need to work at the county budget from the bottom up. How do we provide the key services that I've identified of transportation, mental health, parks, and the judiciary system. In terms of how you budget going forward, you want to make sure that you're working with the people who actually provide those services. You need to identify what is not core to those services and get out of that business. And I think from a very specific perspective, we can do an awful lot more in mental health with the way that we're providing those services. And it's been mentioned about the decentralizing into more community-based systems and 16 or fewer beds, getting us to better outcomes, getting us to better reimbursement. That is one specific area that I would cite to where I think you both have better results and it will actually cost us less. And also I think a major area that we need to take a look at is the funding of our transportation system. Milwaukee County is one of very few, I believe just about the last county transportation system in the country that continues to fund its bus system via the property tax. I think that what we need to get to is a dedicated funding source to keep that transportation system robust, taking people back and forth to jobs and to school, helping communities and businesses to realize that they can have the infrastructure that they need in order to grow. And I would support moving that to a dedicated funding source as passed in Milwaukee County, a 0.5% sales tax that passed in the last referendum on the subject.
Jeff Stone, 2 examples.
Sure. Many of us have to do more with less. I know in my family we have to do more with less over the last few years. It's a very personal thing to most of the people in this county. And so it comes down to you have to say, where are there opportunities to make reductions? Two, that I would point to are the cost of employee benefits and pension obligations that have been created. We've got to do more to have folks contributing towards those costs. We've got to be more creative in how we deliver health care options for active and retiree employees. I believe there's potential for savings there. We've got to come back to the mental health issues that we talked about before. We have to optimize the revenue for those types of services that the county will continue to deliver. And I think we've got to optimize public-private partnerships. We've seen some elements of that. I would agree that the airport is a shining example. It's a growing example where we have higher traffic. We create revenues there, but we have a partnership between the county and private entities that's successful. We need to replicate that in other areas of the county.
Thank you. Lee Holloway?
I think that we've already started. Some of these candidates are talking about what they would like to do. I was involved with ICC over a year ago, that we have already started to work on developing an insurance package. It would work because basically the municipalities are under the same union contracts that we are. What happened is that we have like 7,100 people that are retired, and we have about 5,000 people that are working. When we take and bring in another insurance entity, and our cost is extremely high, when we bring in another insurance entity, it brings our costs down. I'm also communicating with the bus system to get them involved as well. We have created a relationship with municipalities, like, for example, Cudahy. We're doing ITT services with them. We have a contract with them. We're doing IT services with West Allis. We also had Jack Carrion to take and creating a relationship. For example, when we remove snow, sometimes we remove snow in one direction, we stop. And then the other municipality moves snow in one area, stop. It's not cost efficient. We're trying to find ways to do that. It's a lot of creative things that we like to do. Some things that we'll need to have to contract out. Other things we need to learn how to do it better. And those are some of the initiatives that I plan on implementing.
Thank you. Chris Abele.
Well, I agree. There's a lot of options. One, as the county exec was just talking about, pooled buying. If all we did was the health insurance buying that's done by MPS, the health insurance buying that's done by the city, the health insurance buying that's done by the county, and the health insurance buying that's done by the state, if they had just a memorandum of understanding to pool their buying, they'd have a hell of a lot more leverage to negotiate better deals. What's gotten in the way, again, of that sort of thing is the sense that of leadership of the various entities that there's a competitive reason not to do it, whether it's politics or a sense of turf. There's also, I think, big opportunities to grow earned revenue. I've had the experience of working with someone who I think is one of the gems of that county. I think we'd all agree, Sue Black, at Parks. The Parks Department has grown earned revenue for years in a row. Its operating budget, as a result, has been cut. I think, in the private sector, when you have a department that's growing its earned revenue, you'll keep pushing and investing into that until you stop getting a return. There's been a lot of investigation and opportunities to build that. In Chicago, the Parks Department bids out their services to surrounding municipalities. They generate more earned revenue, and when Daley gets asked, how far are you going to keep expanding, he'll say, until I stop getting more earned revenue. There are things where we have efficient delivery of service where we could go to, say, Franklin and say, we'll do your landscaping, your taxpayers save money, get better service, generate more revenue for Milwaukee County, and reduce Milwaukee County's need and give us free up more capital. What needs to change to get all of this to happen is a culture, and the culture has to be in every department from top to bottom, more, better for less. It's not about preserving a job, it's about delivering the best value for taxpayers.
Aisha Griffin.
Yes, I would like to first respond to the fact that when County Executive or Acting County Executive Holloway said that the other candidates are talking about what they're doing and he's doing it. It's a difference because we're talking about it because it has yet to be done. It's a difference between talking about it and actually being about it. The things that I would like to implement if I am county executive, two things is actually literally going in into the trenches, analyzing each major county administration department on a function by function basis, and the legal, logistical, and the complexity associated with each one. For example, you have where Scott Walker, because what he's laid off, unlawfully laid off some security workers. Right now, just the payback, the back pay alone is almost $500,000. You also have the county where you have the Milwaukee County Sheriff Department has undercover deputies on the buses. At the same time, they're using WACNUT for the buses as well. What I would like to do is consolidate some services, also look at some of the things that's going on, and cut some of them services. We can literally take the WACNUT security guards that are overlapping with security guards that have to come back and put them on the buses and remove Sheriff Clark's undercover officers. Those will save money and put it towards the pension problem that we have now. I also talked about earlier having an expansionary fiscal policy where it will be an internal control structure with control procedures. It will be based on the my financial accounting will be based on the generally accepted accounting principles with cash flow charts. We need to see where the money is going. You also can look at what's going on in other counties. You don't have to go beyond Wisconsin. Other counties have different things that are being implemented, and it works. So compare and contrast. Those are two things I would like to do if I'm elected Milwaukee County Executive.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Brad Hicks for the next question.
Yeah, I would like to step away from policy questions for a moment and ask each of you a personal question. I have a different question for each candidate, and we'll go through them. We'll begin with Jeff Stone. You've been in the Assembly, what, 12, 13 years now? You've promoted issues such as voter ID that really have no chance of passing without Republican control in Madison. Now that you have a majority in Madison and you have a Republican governor, why would you walk away from the opportunity to actually advance your agenda statewide for the Milwaukee County Executive position?
I think that what I can do is to bring the most value is to help Milwaukee County move forward. I've talked a lot about my concern about economic development and jobs. Those are the things that I really care about. I think that the future of Wisconsin hinges upon a strong economy here in Milwaukee. And I want to take all the experience that I have and the relationships that I've built, whether it is as a local official, in Greenfield, working with other communities, or being in the legislature and having the relationships I do with the people that now run the legislature and sit in the governor's chair, and put those things to work to make this economy in Milwaukee become a part of what's going on with our state. You're seeing a tone set in Madison right now. Just as recently as yesterday, we passed legislation that changes the tort environment, that makes our area more attractive for business. We've created incentives for job creation, tax exemptions. We created exemptions on health savings account to spur people to go into small business and create health care. I want those ideas being carried out here and creating an economy that's sustainable, because I want people to have a Milwaukee where they can have the kind of future that I had when I came here and created a business and built a home and a life with my family.
Lee Holloway, in a recent Fox 6 interview about some issues concerning the condition of your rental properties in Milwaukee, you said it's difficult to keep up your properties, quote, when you have the kind of clientele that I have, which are poor. There are tens of thousands of poor people in Milwaukee County. How can you expect them to believe that you'll be sensitive to their issues when you're publicly blaming them for being the problem?
Well, I'm not blaming them. My properties have been hit by the economy 8 years ago. I have a number of people who are unemployed, not able to pay their rent, or not able to pay their rent at all. I'm sure that you're aware that within the central city, that age between 18 and 35 years old, there is 50% unemployment. Mm-hmm. That plays a very significant role in Milwaukee County, the central city, period. The same thing in Milwaukee County. Milwaukee County has had problems too. where we have fixtures off the buildings fall, not being able to keep up with the parks repairs and whatever. It's the same kind of thing. It's the same thing in the state of Wisconsin. The state of Wisconsin have disrepaired roads, other facilities not being kept up. It's $1 billion budget. We're all in this together. So just to pick on me in reference to me also having the same kind of problem that everybody else is having, I'm in this. We have 10,000 foreclosures in Milwaukee County. Many of the apartments near me are boarded up. And I have 94% occupancy rate. So people are not shying away from my property. The code violations are primarily storm windows, which we take and provide plastic, which is better than storm windows, and it has to do with a tuck pointing, which is all complete. Within the households, it's fine. So that's my concern and how I'm responding to it, is that Milwaukee County has problems, the city of Milwaukee has problems. Have you rode on the roads? Have you seen the roads? Have you been participating in the fees? Have you seen the state of Wisconsin with their problems?
Since you're posing questions to me, I'll respond, which is there are problems, but people are looking for the leadership to solve those problems. And what you're saying is you haven't been able to solve those problems.
I'm saying that I have resolved these problems. We are working to resolve the problem. Just like the county is working on resolving the problem, just like the state is in trying to resolve the problem. What is Scott Walker doing? He's trying to solve the problem. Everybody is trying to solve the problem. We're all in this together.
Very good. Questions for the other candidates?
Chris Abele, since you came to Milwaukee, about 2 decades ago now, you have shared generously your good fortune, much of it geared toward the arts. However, Milwaukee, as you know, has a massive population with little or no fortune and little or no hope of getting a fortune. And honestly, musicals and masterpieces aren't exactly on their list of wants and to-dos. What have you done, or what do you intend to do to demonstrate that you can connect with people who have a very different world than the fortunate world you have been exposed to and grown up in?
Sure, that's a very good question. I was absolutely privileged. I've never been unclear about that, to have a dad who grew up in a blue-collar suburb of Boston, worked very, very hard, had a lot of success, and created access to an awful lot of resources. What I'm grateful for, though, is the fact that what's really impressive is he did it without a dad to be around to guide him. His father was a Navy subcommander who died in World War II, giving his life to save others. I know what a Navy Cross looks like because I've seen one, and the reason I mention that is that informs the way my dad thinks about what's important in life, and every single day of my life growing up, I heard the most important thing anyone can do is to give back and to serve publicly. That said, I realize that the arts is probably the more visible part of what I do. The best board experience I have ever had in my life is the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Milwaukee. I had the great privilege of chairing that board for 3 years. About 10 years ago, a good friend of mine, Marty Stein, and I, we raised $59 million for an endowment, which at the time, and I don't know if this has since been passed, but was the single biggest endowment campaign of any social service group in the country. We didn't do it to set a record. We did it because there's 33,000 kids in Milwaukee who generally don't have parents, don't have adults in their life to encourage what they do. It's not about handing out, it's about empowerment, and that's about the most rewarding thing I've been lucky enough to do. So, do I relate? Yes.
Aisha Griffin, during your run for the Assembly, you had the much publicized slogan, "Not the white man's bitch." Now that you're running for Milwaukee County Executive, how do you intend to convince Milwaukee County voters that you can govern the county's diverse population with such a divisive sentiment?
Well, I think that all of us is at least as smart as a fifth grader, and I did define what my statement meant. I also apologize to those who took it out of context, if it got quote unquote lost in translation. It was a federal law called the Fairness Doctrine that the media, which was rescinded under the Reagan administration, when there are controversial issues, you're supposed to give the person with the focus of the controversy ample time to explain it. Well, I don't control the media. The media doesn't show me talking to the Government Accountability Board and explaining what my statement meant. My statement came from a perspective of being subjected to a number of different injustices. And when I stated that, I didn't just state that, I gave them the dictionary definition. If you look at the United States Supreme Court, if we are a country of laws and not of men, the United States Supreme Court in 1967 said Caucasian and white does not mean the same thing, does not have synonymous meaning. The dictionary itself has a term called white man's burden, specifically talking about African Americans. It also has a term saying white man together as a power structure, an entity. So I was an independent. As an independent, I was told that I could not be on a ballot without a statement of principle. My statement of principle was towards the other candidates, setting myself. When I said not the white man's bitch, not means under no circumstances. The is a distributed force. White man was going into the context of the power structure, the entity as defined by law, as been stated under different musicals, Michael Jackson, The Man, Tupac Shakur, the white man talking about the entity, the corporation. The bitch is the dog that rolls over, forced to breed when told to. I specifically stated this and showed the context and definition of each word. It was never ever geared towards a racial entity. If I'm a victim of oppression and discrimination, it wouldn't be right or logical that I would further oppress or discriminate against others. So again, I repeatedly apologize to those who took it out of context, thinking I was making a racial slur, which I didn't. And I also stated the fact my last name is Griffin. I do have British and Indian ancestry within me. So if you saying that I'm making a statement based off of skin color, you don't even know what my blood lineage is myself. You know, so again, it was not a racial term. I only made that statement on my campaign papers. I wasn't going around telling everybody I'm not the white man's bitch, vote for me. I wasn't actually pointing towards a race, and the results of that election showed that I received 3 times as many votes in the suburban areas as I did in the Milwaukee wards. So I believe those in the suburban areas understood very well what I meant.
Very good. And finally, Jim Sullivan, you lost your re-election bid to Leah Vukmir. Would you be running for this position if you had won? And I sort of have a 2-part question. That's sort of a yes or no. And given that you lost re-election, is your agenda, your message, fundamentally different now in any way than it was in the fall and through the summer when you were running for re-election?
But to be clear, I had no intention in the last year or 5 years ago of running for Milwaukee County Executive. It would have been my preference that Tom Barrett would be governor of the state of Wisconsin, and frankly that Scott Walker would be where he was before and would be in a position where he would have to answer for what I regard to be 8 years of decay and neglect in Milwaukee County government. I am running because I perceive that there is a very serious problem that confronts us. I think that at least in terms of my own belief in public service, that when you have some leadership in order to be able that you can offer to your community, if you care about the basic functions that we depend on in Milwaukee County, if you're not willing to leave this either to a dismantling of that system or a continuation of what I consider to be very negative policies under Scott Walker, then I think it's important to step up to the plate. I think that that is what public service is all about, and I am not willing to stand by and simply allow a county that I have grown up in to continue to decay. I think that 2010 was that election. This is not about the 2010 election. This is about the serious challenges that we face in Milwaukee County, and it's about getting Milwaukee County working again, and that's why I'm in the race.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Steve Jagler. We'll ask the questions to be brief and the responses to be brief as we try to make the most of our last 20 minutes.
The Park East Freeway in the heart of downtown Milwaukee was torn down 6 years ago, but no development has occurred on the county-owned land. Why is that, number one? And number two, what would you as county executive do to promote development on that land?
I think we begin with Lee Holloway on this one.
Well, earlier, I don't know whether you was able to hear what I had said. I indicated that as recently as I think it was Wednesday, that I met with the MSOE president, and I am supporting him putting the parking lot and the soccer field there, which would create a lot of economics. It'll be a coffee shop. It will allow over 500 cars to be parked. That will stimulate other businesses to move there, and I think it's a fine opportunity to start. So I think that you have to look at it from a perspective of the economy. That's why some people were initially against the MSOE deal, because they thought it was not business-oriented enough. But I think it is, and I think it will stimulate the economy. And that's all that we have on the table, because we have not had anyone given us any interest that they had any plans to do any business down there so far.
Chris Abele?
The city, though, has been able to get some development on the land it owns in the Park East. Why hasn't the county produced the same results?
Well, I just think that the fact that no one has brought that to us. I mean, some of the deals that we did have failed. Some of the people who had indicated they want to do business, they pulled away when the economy stopped. We had a number of hotels and apartment complexes that were had been brought to the table, but what happened was the economy, and they pulled out, and there's nothing we could do about that.
Chris Abele?
Well, I couldn't agree more that the empty space that is the Park East land is one of the most frustrating things we all look at when we drive through downtown. One of the things I said before, and I think this relates to it, is coordinating the efforts of county and city. I've got a good relationship with the mayor. I've got a good relationship with the governor. I've got a good relationship with a lot of the aldermen. And honestly, it doesn't matter to me who gets credit for some kind of development. It doesn't matter which party wins. It doesn't matter who gets the press conference. What matters is that something gets done. And I think sometimes if we let the fact that we don't have a potential development that is a 100% home run prevent us from doing anything, we're going to sit empty for a really long time. I think the very first thing I do is understand, because there have been opportunities to do development, to understand who are we competing with and exactly what are the benchmarks, what are being offered, and what is making this a yes for businesses in other cities and a no here, and how do we change that, and how do we change it quickly. And again, I don't think it's sufficient merely to say, hey, we're going to create the conditions and just wait for the opportunity to just stroll by. I think we have to create the conditions, we have to target companies, and we have to go out and market. And I'll tell you what, if the county exec and the mayor go together on the same trip, it sends an awfully big message, and a lot better than, you know, a big public debate about, you know, historic preservation, the Marriott, and a lot of things people agree on. The message that sends is this is a tough place to do business. We need to go out and say, we want to earn your business. We want to prove that we can handle it. We can give you what you want, and we're a good place and a responsible steward of that land.
Aisha Griffin.
Well, your question was, why is it just sitting there? Well, that's a simple answer: because of mismanagement. There's over $300 million worth of capital assets that are just sitting there in mismanagement that needs deferred infrastructure repairs. I think that to solve that problem, you have to look at the symptoms and the root of the problem, going back into why the former county executive and the current acting county executive have yet to do anything about that. You have to also look into the budget, the fiscal policies, and what have you to correct the problems that are occurring. Unfortunately, I'm not sitting in the seat right now that the acting county executive is sitting, so I don't know the numbers. But I would personally go in and actually assess the situation. But due to mismanagement, we have that and a number of infrastructures that are just sitting.
Jim Sullivan.
Yeah, I think that the Park East is simply the latest example of what has been a prolonged failure of leadership in Milwaukee County. I can recall as a kid when we moved here in the early 80s, the old Coast Guard base on the lakefront was referred to as the old Coast Guard base in 1981, and it continued to be the old Coast Guard base until the 21st century before we were finally able to move forward. And I think that what that was the influence of whether it was folks on the top of the bluff there or whether it was a lack of leadership within the county, things weren't getting done. Park East were in the same kind of situation. And I think that you cannot divorce this from the leadership relationship that goes on within the Milwaukee County structure. When you had this loggerheads between either the county leadership under Walker or city leadership under Barrett or between the county executive office and the county board, it was because for ideological reasons things weren't getting done. And one thing that I can say to Scott Walker's credit is he came in 8 years ago, I guess it's more than that now, as a change agent, shook up Milwaukee County, which was a largely moribund kind of organization at the time. Nonetheless, you can only go so far as the change agent, as those who's going to come in and push things around and shake things up. I think what we need now is leadership that's going to work cooperatively, leadership that has that relationship and ability to work with a legislative body, the legislative bodies in Madison, the county board here, the city council, and the experience at the state level and at the local level in order to get the job done. And I think that you do need to have that participatory, engaged process where you do have county leadership and city leadership sitting down with folks in the private sector and in the state, and for God's sakes, fill the economic development role in Milwaukee County.
Jeff Stone.
Well, when we talk about the Park East, that was an area that I was involved when we took down the Park East Freeway. And people came to me as a state legislator who represented, at that time, just a sliver of Milwaukee, and they said, can you help us with this? Can you help us take down this freeway and put this land to work for Milwaukee and for Milwaukee County? And I said yes, and I supported that because I wanted to see those assets, they were being way underutilized, and we needed to work together to get to a solution. And so I supported that. We got it done. We got that freeway cleared. But now the challenge is that it's not about who's getting credit, because I don't think I've ever said publicly that I did that. I was asked to do it by, I believe, then Mayor Norquist and others. It's not about the credit. It's about having policies that actually allow economics to function. And what we've done, what we've seen in the county is that we pile on requirements above and beyond what the market requires or will allow. And so the property sits there, unused, underutilized, wasting an opportunity for our taxpayers, for people that want to get jobs and work in this community. I will continue. I will work with anybody, but you can't continue to create regulations that don't allow for development, for investment in this community. That's what we've got. That's how we solve that problem. And I'm ready and willing to work with anyone because that's one of my biggest regrets, that property hasn't been put to work and saved money and reinvested in this community.
I'm going to try to get to two final questions here, and I'll ask the candidates under a minute, please, in your responses. Steve will go to you, and then we'll try and get to LaToya's question.
Okay, just quickly, Milwaukee County is $1.5 billion a year enterprise, 5,000 employees. Please tell us what, in your background, would make you the best manager of this enterprise, and contrast your experience and background with the others on the panel.
I think we're back to you, Chris Abele.
Yeah, well, I'm not as familiar with everyone else's background on the panel. I do know that about 12 years ago, I started a hospital services business. About 6 years ago, I sold most of it. The part we still have, we reorganized as a small business, but it's still 15 employees, profitable and growing. I also have a real estate business here. In the course of the work I've done at the foundation, where I also manage a budget and staff, I've been on an awful lot of boards, and I've been asked to and accepted the privilege of chairing and leading. I've led a lot. I've worked with the business community, I've worked with Democrats, I've worked with Republicans, I've worked with nonprofits, I've worked with a lot of different kinds of personalities. And again, I'm not doing this because I want to make it a career. I'm not doing it because I want to score points for one side or the other. I'm doing it because I care about the county. I want a county that's efficient, that delivers services, and I've done that sort of thing before.
Aisha Griffin?
First of all, anyone that's elected to office is elected to serve. You know, and I've been a servant to the people since I was about 14 or 15 years old, giving speeches at the DNR building, coming up with solutions, a number of different things. I think my background, I've done more paralegal work for free for those who are in need than I have done to get paid on payroll. I think that I identify more with the people as far as this service that has been done to the Milwaukee County residents as a whole. I think the difference between myself and the other candidates, respectively, is that I don't have any private interest ties. My interest is not in the government, it's in the people. You know, and I think that I can serve the people best as far as being a public servant. I'm not trying to lead, I'm trying to serve. I have fresh ideas, and I would like to share them with the people. Some of the things I would like to do if I am elected is have calendar constituent service days where we meet with the people regularly. You know, I think that we don't need just the county board. We need to have commissions and committees with citizens on them to oversee some things. You know, I think that to compare myself with the past county executive and the current acting county executive, I don't think we've had proper leadership. I think anyone can mismanage, and I'm not trying to mismanage. I'm trying to restore responsibility within the government.
Jim Sullivan.
I think my identity as a member of this community and my experience in public service provides me with strong qualifications in order to lead Milwaukee County. I think it matters when you grow up with the values of work. Growing up in a family that was headed by a public servant, a military officer, and my mother who was a hostess at a restaurant. I grew up with those values of what it's like to work hard, and then as you get older to pay taxes to raise a family in this community. I identify with that. And I also grew up with that message of public service, that we all have something to bring to the plate, and that what we expect those programs out of Milwaukee County are a value to all of us, as in the sense that we are all in this together. And that's a history that I bring to the table here, which is 10 years of elected service as a city council member and as a state senator, my 8 years of military service in the Navy Reserve here in Milwaukee County. I think that when you have that background of being able to sit down with people from the central city, people from the suburbs, people from business, people from labor, Democrats and Republicans, and work together in order to be able to move a plan forward, whether it was the land use plan that ultimately is going to result in this UWM Innovation Park out in the county grounds, which is going to help to bring 2,500 jobs to our community, or whether it was working on complex legislation that I got done in Madison, legislation regulating payday lending, regulation strengthening our drunk driving laws. That's something where I think that if you have the perspective, the demeanor in order to sit down together and say, all right, what are the kind of knotty, tough problems that we face? I remember sitting down and talking to Kathleen Falk about looking at this race at the end of last year. And she said, look, these are human problems. They are subject to human solutions. And you are somebody who can help to come in here and come together, bring the sides together, and move forward for Milwaukee County.
Jeff Stone.
When I fell in love with my wife, I fell in love with Milwaukee. I came here, I found a city that's its core people are just good, basic people. I lived in other places, but this is one where people have deep roots. They care about this community. We have great things here. You know, whether it's cross-country skiing through Whitnell Park, or going to a fish fry at Serb Hall, or going to Jake's on North Avenue. There are great things in this community that are really unique, and I love it here. I've been a business person. I started with literally nothing and built a business here. I have a home. It's a tremendous place to live. I've got experience as a local government official, working with other communities. I've been in the state legislature. I think I've got a unique blend of experience that I can bring to the table here to solve these problems. And I want to solve these problems because I have a vision for Milwaukee that's greater than it's ever been. We're going to have industries built around water, around energy, that are going to lead this city to the top. I want us to be the destination 5 years from now that people say, I want to start a business, I want to come to Milwaukee, I want to make my life there because it's a great place.
Lee Holloway.
I was born in USA, and my parents My father worked at Lattice Company for 35 years. My mother worked at Endless Steel for 30 years. I'm a Milwaukee boy. And I have been involved in a lot of issues. I hear people saying how nice it's going to be when you're able to talk to the mayor, the governor, and what have you. Well, you can talk to the mayor and governor when you're a rich guy. But I want to quote you what President Clinton said. President Clinton said that politics is a contact sport. And when you start becoming, when you're a county executive and you're going talking to the mayor or the governor, it's a whole different kind of situation. When you got to take, you got to give and take. You got to make your move, and you got to sometimes let them make their move. It's a different kind of situation when you are in the contact sport. I know that. I've been in the contact sport for 18 years. I have battled with a county executive in many philosophical differences. We have basically overruled about 70% of his vetoes. I am here because I know you cannot cut your way out of Milwaukee County. The only way you can deal with Milwaukee County is that you got to manage your way out of it. Manage your way out of it based on what I had stated to you earlier about utilizing engineers and creating additional dollars and let them be able to make the profit. Contact with the municipalities. You got to work with the municipalities and then see what you and them have in common and what you can do together and what you can contract out. That's what I mean by contact sport. That's what I mean by working together. That's who I am.
We have time, I'm hoping, for one final question. LaToya, do you think we do? Because I'm going to ask the candidates, they're going to have to, I mean, really be brief here. 30, 40 seconds, and I mean 30 or 40 seconds, please.
I think
LaToya, go ahead, give it a shot.
All right. I've spoken to a number of union heads who believe that labor unions are under attack in the state of Wisconsin. So I'm just wondering what your stances are on labor unions, and if you are elected as county executive, will you ask for more concessions?
Aisha Griffin, we begin with you.
Well, my position on labor unions is they have a defined responsibility, and that's why they exist. I think I will be open and fair-minded if I'm elected to understand what perspective they're coming from and how we can work together. And if necessary, go into the laws that restrict them from overreaching and maybe enacting some of the things that's contrary to the needs of the people.
That's great. We appreciate your brevity, too. Jim Sullivan.
When people are doing their jobs, then labor unions and government have the same goal, and that is to make their community better and the security of their members and citizens better. I recognize that people in the labor movement are folks who are doing a job, and in the case of Milwaukee County, people who are delivering a service. You cannot say whether or not there may be future cuts that are necessary in Milwaukee County government. We have to focus on our core programming, but one thing where I think that there's a large difference with folks who are up here is we've been talking about whether or not privatization is something that's going to continue. I think after 8 years of Scott Walker, looking at privatization as an end goal in and of itself ends up being a serious problem. There are many cases in which case, whether it's the security or whether it's the painting in our parks, that we're continuing to outsource. It's not successful. It ends up costing us money more in the long term. And I think that what we need to get to is the most efficient means of delivery of services.
Jeff Stone.
Unions are not the problem. Unions are a way that government and their employees work together. I've got a record of working well with the unions when I was on the city council. I've always tried to lead by example, but we're in a time of change. It's going to require change from everyone. That's going to include the employees in government sector as well as what many in the private sector have dealt with. But I want to lead us forward and create a community where there's opportunities. I know there's examples that I can point to where you see opportunities for both public sector unions and private employers for growth for this county, and that's what we need.
Lee Holloway.
I basically have supported the union 80% of the time, but I feel that when the responsibility comes to bring the county budget into place, I voted against the union because I thought it would not be in the best interest of Milwaukee County. I feel that Milwaukee County must come first, And that with that, we have to have ability to work with the union. Not all the things that they want I'll be able to support, but there'll be some things I'll be able to support. And with that tug and battle, we'll make Milwaukee County go well.
Thank you. Chris Abele?
Well, the fundamental premise of all unions is ensuring the fair and respectful treatment of individual workers, and that's something that to me is a non-negotiable in any setting, union, county, private sector, anywhere. You ask a private company that's successful how it has good people, because it treats them fairly. Now, I don't think anybody argues that. I also don't think that anybody argues that the most important responsibility of political leadership is to ensure the sustainable and efficient delivery of services. And I don't think the two have to contradict each other. I don't think, I can tell you this, unions aren't the enemy, and talking about it that way I don't think is particularly productive. Being open, being respectful, being honest, and being clear. But again, the most important principle is efficient delivery of service.
That will be the final word today. I want to say a couple of thank yous before we go. Thank you to the candidates for joining us today. Thank you to the journalists who participated. And I'd also like to say a thank you to all of you who braved the cold weather to be with us today. This is a great sign. It's really nice to see this many people interested in the future of Milwaukee County. Thank you very much for being with us.